Hey folks, how's it going? Welcome back. Today, as you can see, I want to talk about cordage and maybe answer the question, why or is 550 paracord the king of cordage? I have a lot of different cordage and rope laid out here, so I'm going to briefly go through all of them. We'll start with paracord, which this is a generic 550 cord. Um, I bought this in a 1,000-foot spool about 15 years ago, and it's done well for me. I've used it for a ton of different uses, but there are some uses that I have attempted to apply this where it didn't work out so well. And we need to ask ourselves why. If paracord or 550 cord is the king of survival cord, why is that? Now, this standard paracord, I've messed with the strands a little bit, but there's definitely more than 7 strands here if you look at them carefully. But basically what we have is a woven outer sheath, standard for paracord, as well as an inner core that this looks like it was just twisted. Actually, it's not even twisted, it's just in there, and it's individual strands, which helps give it its strength. This is generally what paracord looks like. There are some other ones. This one is a paracord that I picked up from either a dollar store or Walmart. It was also labeled as 550 cord or paracord, and it's definitely a distinct 7 individual strands. This is diameter-wise considerably smaller than this, but the same basic principle. The upgrade is going to be survival cord, which is this is like paracord on steroids. This not only has its 7 strands for strength, but it also adds, this particular one adds 3 additional strands of material inside, which generally are either a thread or a fishing line or a waterproof fire tinder. Some even have a brass thread or a very small gauge wire that could actually be used as a snare. This particular one doesn't, but I have seen them out there that do that. This is a little more expensive than your standard paracord, your standard 550 cord that you would get, but it's definitely well worth it. I bought, I think, 100 feet of this a couple of years ago just to check it out, and I really haven't used it for anything more than I would use the standard paracord for. Now, but I at least have it to where if I would need those additional strands, then they would be available to me. And I keep a bank of this, in each of my packs, and a smaller bank of this. This obviously, the regular paracord would be my go-to for general purpose. This would be more specialized. That's why I don't have as much of it, and the fact that it costs a little more per foot than your standard 550 cord. Another type of cordage that I've seen is very popular in the survival community is bank line. This is number 36 bank line. I've seen multiple channels, including Corporal's Corner, that this is basically his primary cord. He uses this for building shelters, putting up a ridge line, shelter guy lines, almost anything he does out there. And this is pretty durable stuff. It's tar coated or tarred bank line, so you can feel it when you handle it. So it is a little more durable when it comes to the elements, but the bank line, the standard paracord, 550 cord or paracord from dollar stores, or even the survival cord, I've noticed all have one downside, and that's longevity to the outdoors. I've used paracord for years as tent guy lines, and I've noticed after a couple years of use, now keep in mind this is a couple years of use, it starts to deteriorate, and I have had it break. I did find a cordage, which is this. This cordage is basically a marine grade paracord. It's more for, if you're familiar with crabbing, I've tried using paracord on my crab traps when I was crabbing, not commercially, just for fun recreational crabbing. Um, but basically, you drop a crab trap all the way to the seabed or the lake bed or whatever, the bay, and then there's a line that comes up to a floaty. And when you check your traps, you pull up next to it, you grab the line at the floaty, you yank the pot up out of the water, you dump the crab into a basket, and you chuck it back in the water. And the paracord did not seem to hold up to the salt water as well as I had hoped. I thought this stuff, would be indestructible, but it's not. Some of the poly line, which is what this is a poly line versus nylon. This also has an outer braided sheath, as well as, instead of being individual strands, it's basically one big strand kind of twisted together. And for some reason, this holds up. Now, it's about the same size, maybe a little bit bigger than standard 550 cord, but it weighs about the same. This is obviously a longer piece, but as far as weight goes, this isn't a whole lot heavier, but it does hold up better to the elements, salt water, sunlight, all of those things that will break your cordage down over time. There is one advantage additionally that I have found, that the poly line or anything from the marine or boating section of, say, Walmart or West Marine or any of your boating supply stores, they're generally the ones that will carry marine grade line or cordage, and it cost a little extra to get this. I think it's because it's specialty. It is a little bit better quality, but I don't see how they could justify the cost difference, because it's a little more than standard paracord. It doesn't come in the same lengths unless you're buying big spools, and it's it can get pricey then. But the one thing that I like about this type of line, which is also this stuff here, which is a poly line, it doesn't stretch as much as paracord. When you're putting up a ridge line for a shelter, you get a fair amount of stretch out of the paracord before it finally actually seats in and is good and taut. This cord doesn't seem to have the same amount of stretch. Maybe the weaving is a little tighter than paracord. I mean, you can kind of feel it, that it's got some springiness to it, and this really doesn't. You can squish it together just like that, but when you're kind of pulling it apart, it only goes so far, and then it just stops. So the stretch in this isn't as extreme as this, and I kind of like that. I have not replaced all of my paracord with the marine stuff, but a lot of my car camping gear, I have replaced the standard 550 cord. I still take it with me. It's a great backup. Because I have so much of it, I'll probably never use that full 1,000-foot spool that I bought. I think I've had it 15 years, and there's probably still at least half, if not more than half, left on it. But I just keep pulling it off and using it, and it's like a never-ending supply. Now, I'm sure over time, it's going to break down and deteriorate. I keep it pretty well protected, in a cool, dry place. It doesn't. It's not exposed to a lot of extreme temperature differences or heat or anything like that. So just trying to extend its longevity, because nothing lasts forever, but I want it to last as long as I can get it to last, and still be usable if I need to pull a chunk off to tie something down or anything like that. These I buy in shorter lengths, and that they work excellent for tie down, for guy lines, for shelters, and for tents. And I have replaced most of my guy lines on my car camping gear with the marine grade stuff, because it does seem to last a little bit longer. And it comes in a congillion. I mean, here's one that's about the same size. This is a 1/4 inch, same as this, 1/4 inch. Now this one is an actual anchor line. I got this from Harbor Freight. It says it's resistant to abrasion, gas, oil, mildew, chemicals, 100% polypropylene. And this is basically marine grade, just like you'd buy at the boat store. It's basically the same as this here. It has very little stretch to it, and it comes with the hook for your anchor. And I think it was about $8 or something like that. It wasn't much. I got this at Harbor Freight. I have several of these. This one obviously hasn't even been used yet. I opened it up just because it was brand new. I wanted you to see the label, because you can pick these up at any Harbor Freight, and they're really cheap for what they are. And this is a 100-foot piece of line, and it weighs. I'm sure the clip here is a fair amount of the overall weight, but it weighs close to nothing. And then there's other types of ropes. If you look on the market, you're going to see several different types. This is a poly line, which in my opinion tends to be a little more durable and have a little less stretch to it. But as far as tensile strength, I think some of the nylon stuff might be a little bit heavier. As far as the tensile strength, the tensile strength, or how much the rope will hold. In this country, we don't have a lot of extreme winds other than hurricanes and tornadoes. I'm not sure if I would want to be in my tent during a tornado or a hurricane, but I am comfortable knowing that this line here is sufficient enough to keep it in place. But I do have other options here. This one, I'm not even sure where I got it. It's pink. It's also a braided poly rope, and I've used this actually for guy lines. Something bigger than a small tarp where I need a heavier guy line. Say I'm hanging a bigger tarp, and I've used this for, and it works out well. I've had this for several years, and it was probably much longer when I bought it, and I cut pieces off and tie stuff down to it. I think at one point I even used this rope when it was at its full length when I bought it, doubled up and pulled a four-wheeler with it, that was stuck in the mud. So this is pretty tough stuff. I don't know where I got it or what it is or what the tensile strength is, but it's the same type weaving, and that's kind of what I wanted you to see. And then, this one is also about the same. This is a nylon version, and it's actually a nylon blend with a 192-pound load limit, and it's for general purpose tying things down. It's not bad line. I think I got it at Home Depot. I keep a ton of this stuff around, as you can see, of different sizes. Here's another one I got at Home Depot. This is a straight nylon, and if you can see, that looks like old traditional style rope, the way it's twisted and put together. Now this has a 525-pound workload, versus 192-pound workload. Now this is a 1/2 inch, and this is a 5/16, which not a lot of diameter difference between these two, but a considerable amount of working strength. So two of these would be just less than 1/2 inch, or just over 1/2 inch. But doubling the workload limit doesn't even come close to the 525 pounds. So I would suggest having a couple of different types of line around. Here's one that I picked up. I'm not sure where I got this one from, but this is a poly line. This is a braided line, not a weaved line. So this is a little bit different. This has a 200-pound working load on it. And again, it's not even used. This feels to me like it would have a fair amount of stretch to it to use as like a ridge line, but I would certainly have no issues, using this for tying something down in the bed of the truck, or even tying between two canoes and towing a load with the canoe, for something like that. And that's the kind of stuff I keep this around for. This I thought was funny when I bought it, and it's 100 foot, which that's an awfully big bundle for 100 foot. This is 100 foot as well. This is only 50 feet, so you can see the size difference. This is 1/4 inch. This is just a poly rope, and I haven't even opened up an end yet to see what the inner strands look like, but it's glow in the dark. I don't know if it glows in the dark. I've never used it, but it was one of those, bargain bin deals at Harbor Freight, and I picked it up just to see that, hey, it might be convenient to be able to see my guy lines at night when I'm camping. so I don't trip walking out in the dark to take a leak. But I've never used it. I'm not real sure of the tensile strength or the quality of this. It says it can only be recharged up to 6 months, and I've had this probably 3-4 years, maybe 5 years. So it probably doesn't even glow in the dark anymore. You can see it's dirty just from being in storage, and then underneath of here it's a little brighter. So you can tell I've had this for a while. I don't know if it glows in the dark or not, but it was bargain bin deal at Harbor Freight, and it's always good to have a large assortment of ropes and tie downs and lines available to you. Here's another one it's very similar to this, just the braided nylon, and this is also a 1/4 inch, and I have D-rings or connectors on here. I think actually I used this once for the dog, which is what I had used this for. I took the dog camping when my younger one was younger. She wasn't as controlled to listening to commands, and I was concerned about her wandering off or getting too far away from camp. So she had to stay on a 50-foot line, which really she did nothing but tangle herself all up and drive me nuts. Here's another. This is a braided. This is a big 1/2 inch. This could actually be probably used for rappelling or heavier workloads. I don't know where I got it. Maybe Home Depot, and I don't even remember what I bought it for, but it was one of those deals where, hey, that's a pretty good deal. It's always good to have some larger rope around. And this one, which as you can see is not even open, which I will open it. This is an actual rappelling line that I purchased many, many years ago. It's actually tied together with a very, it's elastic. But this has a working load of about 800 pounds, I think. This is actual rappelling line. I think I had planned on a trip years ago, and when I say years ago, I mean 15 or 20 years ago. I had planned on taking a trip where there was going to be some rappelling involved, and I was pretty excited about that. And I did not have my own rappelling gear, so I bought a little bit. I think I have 4 of these that have been laying around. It's been sealed, but it's the same basic principle. It has a inner strands as well as an outer, and this is an extremely, extremely tight weave. There feels to be absolutely zero. I mean, it's a real stiff rope, much like, this one is pretty flexible and has some give to it. This one does not. This is pretty serious here, but I've never had to use it for anything, thank goodness, other than I missed out on the opportunity to do a little rappelling. So, which that stuff's pretty messy. It's been in a bin for a couple of years. So, bringing us back to the question of all these different types of cordage and all the different uses that they could be, used for. Why is 550 cord the king? Why is, Paracord the undisputed champion of survival and wilderness uses? That I'm not sure I can answer, because I think everyone's going to have a different preference. There's probably going to be people out there that swear by 550 cord that it's the greatest thing since sliced bread, and I'm not going to dispute that. I think it's great stuff. I've used it for many years. I've used it actually for many decades, and it's only let me down a couple of times for some pretty extreme situations that the marine grade version, which they don't call it paracord or 550 cord, it's just cord, seems to work out a little bit better, but it does come with a higher price tag. The 550 cord, comes in a cajillion colors. It's readily available. That could be what actually makes it the king, the king of cordage. But just so everyone knows, if you're if you're going to put together a kit or put together a bug out bag or a get home bag, and you're looking for, which cordage should I get? Should I just get the 550 cord like all the YouTubers and all the experts say? Or is there something out there that suits me better, like the specialized paracord with the extra strands? That's good to have. But in certain circumstances, it could be overkill. And spending the extra money wouldn't be necessary. Could I get away with just bank line and not use paracord? There's no shortage of examples of guys who are out there doing all the same tasks with bank line as people do with paracord. And bank line is smaller. 100-foot roll of bank line is tiny. It's probably smaller than this. And this is probably only 25 feet. I think it's what I got these in, was 25-foot lengths. And they may have come from Harbor Freight or the boating section at Walmart. I don't remember. But all of these different options, is there one do-all, end-all cordage? The answer is really no. They all have a specific purpose. Some are multi-purpose, like paracord. You can use it for multiple different things. But I'll give you an example. I had to replace a boot lace once, and paracord was the only option at the time, and it worked. It laced in my boot, and my boot tied up. But less than a week later, it broke. It did not last as long as the standard boot laces did. It worked great in a pinch for a field fix, and that's what I needed it for. But it didn't last forever. I don't know if this would have lasted any longer, or this, or any of these other lines. I know bank line's pretty tough. I'm not sure how that would work for boot laces. But again, it's always good to have an assortment, a couple of different kinds, because if you try something out, like you're in a windy area and you use the paracord for your guy lines on your shelter, and they just keep breaking, or something's just not working out for you, do you have another type that you could try, or something along these lines, or something along these lines? And that's why, I really would have liked to have answered the question, but I don't know if there's a straight answer for that question, as far as why is it, or is it really the king of survival cordage? Because there's so many options out there on the market, and there's more options than just what I have here. This is just what I have, here in my supply of different stuff. And I've picked this up over the years, a little here, picked something up there. This is on sale. Hey, I can always use, some cordage. So you kind of collect this stuff, and it amasses to, a bin full of different types of cordage, which is what I have, a big plastic bin full of different types of cordage for different purposes. But paracord is the one I usually go back to. It is very universal. It does many tasks well, and it's cheap and easy to use. For things that require a specialized function or a specialized task, I do try another type of cordage to try to solve the problem. I know when I go car camping, I'm not a big fan of getting rained on, and neither is my significant other. I've tested the limits of my rain fly on my tent several times, and it's never let me down, but I don't want it to let me down. So when I car camp, I not only pitch a 3-season tent to stay in, I put a ridge line with a tarp over top of it as a second layer of protection from any potential rain. And I've tried multiple different lines for a good, because it's a longer ridge line. Usually I'm stretching it 25, 30 feet. And that's a pretty long ridge line to go that long and to pull it tight enough to hold. I think the tarp that I use above the tent, I believe, is 11 by 17 or 14 by 17 or something. It's pretty big. It's a big tarp, and it shades my whole area and protects it from the rain. And believe it or not, the best one I've found has been this 100-foot roll of anchor line, and I get it up there and I get it super tight, and it stays that way for the entire weekend or the entire week. I don't have to keep adjusting it to keep it tight. And I got caught once in a rainstorm in New York State up on Bear Mountain that left me in 6 inches of water. The tent did not leak. Walking inside the tent felt like walking on a waterbed. And when I unzipped it and looked outside, the whole area was flooded with 6 inches of water, and the tent did not leak. Now, the tarp above the tent had a boatload of water at the low end where it laid, but all the guy lines held and the ridge line held. And I used the marine grade stuff, and it didn't shrink. I had to get under it in between the tent and the tarp and kind of push it up to get the water, off of it, before I could take it down and move to another campsite. But these lines didn't let me down. I'm not sure if with the weight that it was holding, that tarp would have still been where it was in the morning off Paracord. So I am kind of glad that I did, use this anchor line for that purpose. And I've used it ever since, and that was 6 years ago. Yeah, 2018 is when I went to Bear Mountain and camped up there for a few days. And I've been using, that was the first year I used this line, and I've been using it ever since. And I've been using the same one. Every year, I take the same 100-foot chunk of line out and stretch it up over the campsite and put a tarp over it so I can have some shade and some protection from the rain if necessary. And most of the guy lines for that tarp are this, but there are still some that I'm using. I haven't gotten enough of these yet. So there are still some I'm using that are Paracord, but I know in time I'm going to have to get more of these, chunks of line for that purpose. So I hope this helps. I'm sorry that it didn't answer the question of, is Paracord the king of survival cord? I think it holds its own in the survival community, and I won't dispute, the fact that, it does have a place and a very useful place. But I cannot ignore the fact that there are other types of cordage out there that are just as good, in some applications better, for right around the same money or just a few dollars more. And sometimes I'd rather pay, a few dollars more for something, knowing that it's not going to let me down, versus, put all my eggs in one basket and hope that the paracord doesn't break or just doesn't stretch and sag or anything like that. So I hope that helps. Certainly, if you have any questions, leave them in the comments. I have been reading the comments, and I'm grateful for them. Makes me happy that people are actually watching my content. I really enjoy sharing what I've learned, some of the hard lessons I've learned, and some of the good lessons that I've learned over my 35 plus years of outdoor and wilderness hobby. And that's really what it is for me. I enjoy camping and backpacking and fishing and hunting, and all of those activities kind of blend over into the prepping and preparedness community, because all of those skills are really necessary, in that community in order to be a good prepper or to be, extremely prepared for situations. It helps to have knowledge in shelter building and the experience, not just how to do it, but the experience of doing it many times, many different ways, waking up with your tent leaking and learning hard lessons that, are no fun out in the field. Because when you're out camping with your buddies or with your family, and your tent leaks, it sucks. It's unfortunate. It kind of ruins everybody's good time. But at the end of the day, you pack everything back in your car and you go home. In an emergency situation where this kind of stuff counts, that option of packing up and going home may not be there. So having the skills and the ability and the experience to do all this, and just, you got to get out there and try it and figure out what works for you in the environment that you're in, the situation, the area, because it's all going to be different. Anybody who is into preparedness and survival and lives in the Southwest, to where the majority of their region is desert, is a desert area, they're going to have a different way of doing things to accomplish the same goal as we have up here in the northeastern region, the same as in the south and up in the north. So you have to try the different methods and experiment with the different styles to see what kind of works for you. But I think it is helpful knowing that when you think to yourself, okay, I'm going to put together a get home bag or a bug out bag, and I need cordage. I guess I should get 550 cord, or I guess I should just order paracord because that's what all the YouTubers tell me, and but that isn't your only option, because you can get the marine grade stuff that does the same job. It weighs the same amount. It may cost a few pennies more per foot, but you have to ask yourself, in an emergency situation, is it more convenient for your cordage to not let you down, or to have to adapt to a situation because your cordage let you down? And again, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with paracord. I use it all the time. I have tons of it, and I love it. It's great stuff. But it's not the do-all, end-all, in my opinion. I think there's other types of cordage and line out there that work just as well, if not better, in some scenarios. So you have to experiment with it. Keep your eyes open all the time and see, what the dollar store has, or what Walmart has, or Harbor Freight, or Lowe's, or any of the stores that you shop at, to figure out what's available out there and test it. Get it out, take a weekend, go camping, or set it up in your backyard and see how it does. And that'll answer your questions. For now, that's all I have. I hope it was helpful to you, and we'll see you next time.